Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Sanchez, artist at CG Sketch, and today I'm going to talk about using TyFlow to create the effect of leaves blowing and falling in the wind. It's a nice little effect that we could add to our animations and give a little bit of dynamic movement to an otherwise static scene. It's a nice little effect that you'll see often used by a lot of the big studios, and I like to apply it sometimes to just add a little bit of interest. And we're going to use TyFlow to do this. As we know, TyFlow is a simple particle generator. It's in beta mode right now, and it's free to download for anybody that wants to try it out and install it. So I advise you go ahead and do it. It's simple but a very powerful particle generator. It's really awesome little app. So let's go ahead and see how we can go about achieving this effect. So within 3D Studio Max, this is the scene that I just showed you guys, and you'll see you see the leaves falling in the wind and kind of interacting with the floor and falling gently and softly. The way to do this, let's get this out the way. Go ahead and close this up. And so the way to do this, first of all, we want to go ahead and create a TyFlow object. So go to TyFlow, just select the TyFlow object, and now let's go ahead and create a TyFlow or Ty icon helper. So this is where you're going to be. It's going to be where your leaves are coming out of, and this you could just create it as big as you need to. The leaves are going to be coming out of this surface right here. So I'm just going to put it more or less right here where I had originally put it. And now if you go to your TyFlow object, open editor, you'll see this screen here. If you're familiarized with 3D Studio Max's particle generator, you'll be familiarized with the way this works. Pretty simple system. First thing we want to do is give it a birthing event. This will mean that the generator, or that the particles are being born from this icon here. To do that, we want to give it a pick icon or position icon operator. So that's going to be right here. Once we do that, we pick the icon, the Ty icon, and now you'll see that particles are being born from within the icon, but they're just staying there because there's no force. So let's go ahead and add a gravity force, a couple of different forces. Let's go to force, and you'll see here that TyFlow comes with built-in gravity. You could just select this button and type in real world, and it'll give it the real world gravity. And now you'll see that the particles are falling straight down. Let's give it a little bit of wind in the direction that we want. So let's try this, see what happens. It's falling in the opposite direction, so let's make it -0.2. Okay, there we go. So now the particles are flying more or less in the direction that we want it to fly, but obviously it's not falling correctly to the ground. So let's go ahead and keep improving on this to get the desired result. Okay, so up next, let's convert these particles into leaves. So to do that, let's give it a mesh operator, and that's going to be a shape operator. So that's going to be here, shape operator. And then let's select the leaves. So I have here 2 leaves that I've modeled and textured. So delete the standard ones, remove, add selected. So I got 2 different leaves, they're on here now. I'll scale them up a bit, 150. And now let's go over back to our Ty icon, and under display, let's make sure from type, change that to geometry. And now you'll see that it's actually the leaves themselves that are being born from the generator, and no longer just those little dots. But they're moving way too fast. So let's go ahead and slow this down. There's actually a slow operator on here. Let's go ahead and put this here. And let's change this up. Let's make it, for now, it's 50. I will play with it later on. For now, let's make it 50, like so. Also, leaves tend to rotate in the wind and spin, so TyFlow has a spin operator. So let's go ahead and give it a spin operator, put it here, and just a random 3D. That seems to be pretty good. It's just gently rotating and spinning in the wind. Very good. Okay, now let's give it a physics operator, and this is something pretty cool with TyFlow. It uses NVIDIA's physics engine to generate collisions and bounces off of surfaces. So if you give it the physics shape right here, now you'll notice that as it hits the ground, it's interacting with the ground. It's crashing, bouncing, sliding off, and that's all thanks to the physics calculation within NVIDIA. And you could change the settings for those for that engine. If you select the TyFlow object, come over here to your physics tab, and let's go ahead and change the gravity to real world value, like so. Alright, let's press play, see what this looks like. Okay, so now we see that the leaves are falling a bit too fast for my taste, so let's go ahead and slow this down a bit. Let's bump it up to 65. Alright, so now they're kind of gently falling, but they're falling a bit too straight. So let's give it a little bit of noise, something more realistic, since leaves kind of tend to move around in the wind, kind of like a feather, since they're so light. So if we go back to our force operator, you'll see here that it has a noise layer. Let's add some noise, see what this looks like. Let's start with, I don't know, 5 inches. And already you could tell the leaves are kind of wiggling and jiggling in the what appears to be the wind. So that's a pretty good effect. Let's add some here as well. Let's see what happens. And let's make the roughness less. I want it to be nice and smooth. Alright, already there we see a nice little effect where the leaves seem to be kind of moving gently with the wind. They hit the floor and interact with the floor, as a matter of fact. Now we have way too many leaves coming out of this icon, so let's say we want to control that. If we come back to the birthing event, we have ways of controlling how many particles and how many leaves are generated. So in this case I have a total of 200 throughout its life. Let's change that. Instead of using a total, let's do a per frame and drop that to 0.5, still too much. 0.1 leaves per frame. Let's make it 0.2. Let's go ahead and drop this bit. 0.2 leaves per frame. And now you see that it'll just generate every number of frames, it'll generate a leaf, and it'll gently come on to the floor. They slide. Okay, now you might find that the leaves are kind of a little bit too soft, and when they hit the ground they slide too easily. You can easily control that. When you come to your physics shape operator, you'll see on there a dynamics tab. You could control the friction, and that should help so that when the leaves hit the ground they kind of have more friction and thus tend to be more likely to stay where they are versus kind of moving around. You see, now it's much better to put it around 10. And now we have a pretty convincing effect. I mean, seems to be pretty cool effect. It hits the ground, it stays there, interacts a little bit. Some of them bounce around a bit, some of them stay where they are, and it's a pretty simple effect to achieve, and it adds a lot of life to your animation. Now let's say you want to render this in a rendering form, and but you don't want to have to install TyFlow on all your computers. You could come on here and go to export particles. If you were to select objects and you go to export particles as objects, all these leaves here will be converted to actual objects, and you could go ahead and then delete the TyFlow objects and Ty icon, and now you could send it to the rest of your computers in your farm, or send it to whatever rendering farm you're using, and not have to worry about having TyFlow installed on all your computers. So again, this is a pretty interesting effect. I hope you guys find it useful, and as you can see here, it makes for a nice movement, nice dynamic movement to what again would be an otherwise boring scene. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked it, stick around. I'll keep creating some. If you got any questions, feel free to put them down below. And thank you guys so much for watching.